So in this space, I think we can all agree that health is the goal. And there's quite a few of us that really thought that diet was the answer. It was the end all be all for health. But it's so much more than that. And I'm pretty sure you can attest to that. Look at you diving into the ice bath every day for a year, although your toes may disagree just a little bit after.
They're still very poor.
But there's so much more to it than just diet. I think diet is a fantastic foundation, but chemicals, sunlight exposure, you name it, so much of it can affect us. And I'm finding out that for most people, for most children specifically, these food dyes are actually much more dangerous and detrimental than the sugar itself is.
Yeah. Did you go keto and thought you had to give up wine? Well, let me introduce you to Dry Farm Wines. It is the world's first sugar-free alcohol that is lower than your typical wines, organic, made at local farms that do it the right way. Most of the wines that you buy are from 3 really big companies, loaded with additives and preservatives, so many dozens of those kinds of things. You don't want all that junk in your wine. So go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and they will ship you these wines. And just because you listen to this podcast, Dry Farm Wines is going to give you a bottle in your first order for just 1 cent. Go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and you will get your bottle of wine for just 1 singular penny. Go check them out. Dry Farm Wines, you guys. It's wine o'clock somewhere.
And I fell across, I came across Rebecca Bevins, Dr. Rebecca Bevins, several years ago when I was taking a college course. We had to write a paper, and I was like, I want it to be something about diet. And they're like, no, it can't be diet. It has to be something, sciencey. Okay. So that's when I found the food dyes. Watched her TED Talk, and my mind was completely blown because her son is my son. She had a suicidal 7-year-old, and she had to figure out why on earth he's this way, because she has her education. Oh my gosh. I can't even begin to explain how much this woman knows. She has oh gosh, I'm going to get it wrong. I'll have to have my husband look it up and tell me. But master's in clinical psychology. Is that what it is? Child clinical psychology. And she's got a suicidal 7-year-old.
Thank you, honey. Appreciate it.
I know he's over here. He's my tech guy. He's my help. I love him. So she's trying to figure out what it is. And one day she was like, okay, honey, I just need you to focus. Just focus. And he goes, Mom, I can't. My brain is buzzing.
Yeah.
She's like, that's not normal. Well, my second son was the same way. Same symptoms of overly aggressive. He was diagnosed at the age of 5 with oppositional defiant disorder.
Wow.
And that is some nasty stuff. That is, he physically gets a high in his brain from doing what he's told not to do. So he becomes very dangerous to himself and to others. When he would get in trouble at the age of 2, he would go find his baby sister sleeping in her bassinet and go beat her up.
Whoa.
Because he would get a high off of doing that. So what do? We medicate him with these bright blue and pink pills. Well, I'm thinking, yeah, he's better, kind of, but not super better. Come to find out that those nasty dyes are actually the cause of a lot of conduct problems that we have in today's society, but nobody is talking about it. Why? The same reason that they're not talking about sugar. Because it goes against the narrative. It makes money. They can't possibly be that bad. And the FDA has come out and said, oh no, it's fine. As long as you don't consume too much. Fun little fact. Right. Children's cough syrup. Let's say your kid gets, a cold. So you go to give them some cough syrup. With that 1 dose of cough syrup, which is, fire engine red, your child has now exceeded the daily safe allowance for all of their food colorings in 1 dose. Who doses their kid when they're sick once a day? No, you're usually 4 times a day. Right. So now they have quadruple what they should be getting. And that doesn't include if they've eaten their cereal that also has the dyes in it. And then their toothbrush covered in their toothpaste and their mouthwash and their bubble bath. It's literally everywhere. And it's terrifying when you start to kind of go into it. I actually have a print up right here of the chemical structure of them. Not that any of you can see this. They're similar to meth in their chemical structure, and they have what's called a benzene ring. What does that mean? Well, I just happened to have my husband go on to the CDC's website and print up what is so toxic about benzene. Let's just take a little look for the CDC, the WHO, and the EPA. So what is benzene? Where is it found? Benzene is found in rubbers, lubricants, dyes, detergents, pesticides, plastics, synthetic fibers, paints, glues, and cigarette smokes. Fantastic lineup right there. So how does benzene work? Benzene works by causing the cells not to work correctly. For example, it causes bone marrow not to produce enough red blood cells, which can lead to anemia. It can also damage the immune system by changing the blood levels of antibodies. And serious poisoning depends on the amount, the route, the length of exposure, the age of the person, if you have pre-existing conditions, anything like that. So it can cause all kinds of problems with your immune system, anemia, and these are things that could potentially be blamed for something else. The long-term effects of overexposure to benzene: cancer, decreased immunity, and reproductive issues.
Yes.
We have a pandemic in itself of infertility, PCOS. No one knows what's going on. Maybe, just maybe, these dyes could have something to do with it. Because did you know, fun fact, Dawn dish soap has 3 different dyes in it. But it's fantastic for cutting the grease on our carnivore dishes. So it's literally everywhere. So what can you do in order to try to keep yourself safe from these dyes? Because you could be, as an adult, affected just as much as a lot of these little kids are. Only 50% of kids grow out of it. So how many adults are, driving around with road rage?
Yeah.
You can't figure out why you're so angry about something.
Yeah.
It could simply be what's in your toothpaste.
And combine that with a lack of fat in their diet, which then messes with their brain. I know a lot of the food dyes also are endocrine disruptors, and so they impact other mechanisms in the body. Deanna says Procter & Gamble just pulled several shampoos recently because of that ingredient you just outlined. And you may not know this, I did a Jimmy Rants when I did that show about 1.5 years ago of what they put into the hokey pokey thing that they want everybody to take. It also has that ingredient in there.
Yeah, it's not necessary. It doesn't need to be in there. It affects you in so many ways. It doesn't need to be in any of our food, anything. So we're actually working with Rebecca Bevins right now. We are looking into getting crowdfunding for the testing that needs to happen so that we can present it to the FDA and so say, get this crap out of our food now.
So what's the test called that people would get done to see if they have exposure to this?
So there is, what was it called, Danny? There is a food sensitivity test.
Yes.
That you can get done, and I can't remember which one it is.
There's a bunch of food sensitivity.
There's a bunch. There's one that in my Mighty Network, I just started up in Mighty Network, and one of the other coaches that's there, she is super big on all of the blood testing and everything. So she has a test that you can test for specifically.
Yeah.
And if you show that you are very sensitive to those, then those can be a really big problem for you.
And look, again, people have this perception, food dyes. Okay, it's just coloring. I want my toothpaste to have that bright green and blue and whatever, And so people, they only view it as such. Do you think there needs to be warning labels put onto products that include these dyes? But again, they put warning labels on cigarettes and people still smoke cigarettes. I guess at the end of the day, if you know, at least you can make an informed decision. And if you choose not to decide correctly, then that's on you.
I think that's the base of the problem is informed decision.
Right.
Nobody is being told anything about anything anymore. So we don't have a clue what we're actually consenting to when we buy that box of loopy cereal
Yeah.
that looks like rainbows.
Is there enough evidence that there's a connection here, that there could be a class action lawsuit filed, or do you know if any have been filed?
I don't know.
Rick Bevins is trying to do.
That's
why we're trying to crowdfund.
Oh yeah. So I don't think that there's enough proof yet, but Rebecca wants to take her 16-year-old and put him into a PET scan and light up his brain with these artificial dyes and see what happens. Yeah. And that's part of what we're going to raise the funding for, to be able to do these, to prove of what it physically does to you.
I mean, I hope she's successful, but they do the same thing with sugar, and they light up people's brains with sugar, and they still push sugar in everything.
Yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle. We've got a long way to go. But if enough people can remove it from their food and remove it from their environment and see significant improvements, and then when they, do the test, go back to it, see how badly you react. If we can get enough people to come out of the woodwork and say, look, I did this and I was so sick, I was suicidal, then we may begin to get enough to stand up for ourselves on this.
I'm sure somebody has made this resource, but it would be cool to have a diefree.com website where people can access clickable links to buy the products that they love, but just in a food dye free way. One of the best ways to get rid of food dyes is don't buy foods that have a label that would have food dye in it. That's fun. This is why carnivore is so beautiful. I've been eating carnivore pretty much for the last 4 years, ketovore. And yeah, it's hard to get food dyes if you're eating meats and other sources of real whole foods. But we do live in a world where that's not always an option, and maybe you need a protein bar. Is there something that they would look for on the label itself? Does it have to say red dye number, whatever?
So that's what's really sneaky about everything, is that they are starting to not put red dye 40 on it. They're starting to actually call it by its chemical name. And so you have to...
What's the chemical name?
I don't remember what all of them are, because there's quite a few of them.
If it's a long word, just know that's probably a food dye.
Yep, and you need to look it up and see what it is, because then it'll be like yellow 5. And you're
at least they do that. The one that gets me on food labels is where they put like natural flavors.
Yes.
That is such a non-starter, as you don't know what that is. And I found out one of the natural flavor is gonna freak some people out if they haven't heard this before, especially in sweet products. Raspberry flavor. You like raspberry flavor in something, or strawberry flavor and something like that? It's from, I'm not kidding, this sounds like I'm punking you, but this is totally serious. Go Google it, go look it up. It is from beaver's butt glands. I'm not kidding you.
I thought it was imitation vanilla.
Imitation vanilla has some of those kinds of things going on as well. It's why I get real vanilla beans and make my own, or you use that, because as soon as you find out about what natural flavors, and it's on everything, like if you turn it on the back, and it's usually towards the bottom, and as soon as I see natural flavors, I think beaver's butt, and I just put it right.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, yes. And I've said that for a while, is that you realize that beaver urine is technically natural flavoring, right?
Yes, and it's all natural. That's another one that's it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, no, and that's what we think. Okay, so a lot of people think, okay, I'll just get rid of all the foods that have artificial dyes in them and I'll be good. There's a problem with that. Your skin is one of your largest organs, and it absorbs almost everything that you put on it, and it takes it into your bloodstream. So sunscreen, for example, they've done testing. You cover yourself in sunscreen, and 24 hours later, there are almost toxically high levels of some of those chemicals concentrated in your blood.
Yes.
So if your lotion or your shampoo or your conditioner or your deodorant, any of those products have artificial dyes in them, you are absorbing them.
Yes.
So it's so much more, or the little plug-in that you put in your wall to make your room smell really nicely.
Renews it.
Those have benzene in them as well.
Yes.
It's the same chemical compounds